video, I'm going to show you how to make a gold chain out of fondant. Hi, it's Karolyn. I am back with another video, and if this is your first time here, welcome to my channel. And if you want to see the different tips and tricks I have and the ways that I bake and decorate cakes, then hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you can get notified whenever I release a new video. So I am making a hip hop, I always confess, I already made a hip hop cake and I put a gold chain on it, and I'm just filming the intro and the outro right now. I wanted to show you guys how I do that. So I got this mold on Amazon. I can link it below. And these molds can get a little tricky as to like getting the fondant out of the mold and everything. I do have a little issue with it, you'll see in the video, but I just want to show you how to get a pretty fondant chain if you wanted to make it for your cake. So if you want to see how I do that, then just keep on watching. Okay, so to do this, you're going to need your chain mold. I can link this below. I believe I got this on Amazon. I have my marshmallow fondant, which I put in the refrigerator, in the microwave for about 15 seconds so it could get soft and pliable. I can link my recipe for marshmallow fondant below as well. As always, I add a little bit of Tylose powder to my fondant. It helps it stiffen up so it's not so soft, and it dries more like gum paste. I love this stuff. A little bit goes a long way. I will link this below as well. I'll link everything below. You need some Crisco with a paintbrush, some kind of shortening, and some cornstarch, and a little bit of gold coloring. I like this Allen Tetriol brand, and I also like to use AmeriColor. Whoops, there's a little bit that got there. So I'm going to start. I just washed my hands, very clean hands, and I'm going to add some of the yellow that fell on the counter and just make this a gold color. So knead the color all together. I like to use a little bit of Crisco rubbed on the countertop so the fondant doesn't stick. Okay, then I want to roll this out into a log that is at least this long. Just going to cut a little bit of the excess off the ends. Okay, now I'm going to take my paintbrush with a little bit of shortening on it and paint all the little crevices in this mold with the shortening. You just want to get a light coating on there. You don't want a whole bunch of shortening on there. You just want to make sure that you have just enough so the fondant won't stick to the mold. And I also like to paint the top of the mold with the shortening as well so the fondant doesn't stick to the outer edges. Also going to grab a little knife here as well. I'm going to start putting this fondant into the mold, taking one piece down at the end. I want to try to get this so not too much fondant is sticking out over the top so I don't have to cut a lot of fondant off. So I'm going to end up cutting a lot of pieces off of here. You want to try to get this to be thin but not too thin because you want it to fill the crevices and not spill over the top. So starting at the end, and I'm just really going to press this down. So I'm pressing this down into the mold, and I'm kind of pulling the fondant down this way, making sure that it doesn't spill over. Like this is filling up too much here. So I want to keep pulling the fondant down. I hope this makes sense. So right here, this is too much fondant here. I just want to thin this out a little bit, so I'm lifting it up and pulling it down. And then really push it down into all the crevices. Take a little bit of cornstarch on my palm and just really press the fondant all the way down, making sure that it's all the way in. Because if you don't have the impression all the way, it's going to be shallow and it's not going to come out right. So now you can see that there's some overspill here. And I just want to trim, lightly trim the top to get rid of the excess fondant. That's the first step. So I have a sharp knife here. What I like to do is paint it with a little bit of the shortening so it can glide through the fondant a little easier. If you find the knife starting to stick, take the knife out, wipe it with a wet paper towel, put some more shortening on it, and then continue the process. So I'm going to hold the knife level, if you can see this way. I'm holding it exactly perpendicular, if you will, parallel, whatever it is. Yeah, this would be perpendicular, parallel to the mold. And I'm just going to do little sawing motions back and forth to start to cut the fondant off. Now, I cut a little bit too much off of the end here. There's a little space here. So what I want to do is fill that space in with some more fondant. So I'm going to rip a little bit off and just push it back into the hole. Okay. Now, this is not finished yet because you need all of these little holes in the chain to show through so it looks like a real chain. So what I like to do is take the knife or flower forming tools. Somebody sent me these and I'm so grateful for wonderful people who are so sweet and give me nice things. I use these all the time. So I can link these below actually. And I just want to clear this top part. All right, so I'm clearing the fondant off of this area and pushing it to the side. Then I move on to the next area. I'm pushing down to clear the area and moving the fondant to the side. And you just want to keep doing this the whole way down. Now, as I find the fondant starting to stick up as I'm moving it off, just take your knife, cut off the excess, and continue the process. Now, you don't want any sticking off the side, so it has to be all in the mold. This is the biggest painful part of this process because it takes forever. But if you take the time to do this, you have a perfect looking chain when you take it out. You want to make sure that it's all the way down on the sides and that the hole is completely clear so it'll have a uniform look when you take it out of the mold. So when I cut it, it covered the hole a little more, so I'm just pushing the fondant back to the sides of the mold. I'm just taking my other finger here and just pushing it all the way down to make sure that it fills the whole cavity. Now I get to this section and it's a little too thin right here. I can see that the cavity isn't filled the whole way. So again, I'm just going to rip off a little bit of fondant and push it into the mold. You don't want it to be thin anywhere because when you lift it out of the mold, it's going to break. So now I want to take this out of the mold. If you are finding that you are having difficulty getting this out of the mold, you can pop it in the freezer for about 5 to 10 minutes so it can get hard. You just have to be mindful that if it is hot and humid, when you take this out of the freezer, you're going to have it's going to get sweaty. So I don't want to put it in the freezer right now because I want to paint it gold right away, and I don't want to wait for the sweat to evaporate off of the fondant. So flipping it over, the tricky part to this is that you're basically peeling the mold off of the fondant. You're not peeling the fondant out of the mold. I'll have a tool here handy to help me get fondant out if it's sticking. I'm going to lift this up, and I'm taking my thumbs and I'm pressing it forward and trying to peel back the edges to get the fondant out of the mold. So I do need help to start it. I'm going to grab this tool and just get under there a little bit, trying not to mess up the fondant. Can be fixed. Once you start it, it's a lot easier to get it out. Okay, now I'm pressing this part down on the counter and then lifting up. So I'm pushing my thumbs forward to try to keep the fondant down on the mat. So this is staying down on the mat. I'm peeling the mold away from the fondant. Broke there a little bit. We can always fix that. That's why you want to press it all the way down so it doesn't break. Always happens though. And when you get to the end, it gets a little tricky, so you got to move a little slower. It always breaks off at the end a little bit for me. When I place it on the cake, I place it so you can't tell that it's broken. All right. So it came out pretty good. I should have put it on this cake box lid. Would have made my life a little easier. I'm going to carefully transfer it so I can paint it and move it a little easier. So now there are sections that are breaking a little bit. You just want to make sure you keep them together as much as possible. I will show you how you can place them on your cake so you can't even tell that they are separated. Yeah, much easier to do it this way. Okay. So now, it still isn't perfect. There are some I call them dirty edges, but they're just jagged. So what I like to do is take a tool, take my finger, and just push in the imperfections, parts that are sticking out on the outside. But see how it's a little jagged there? It's like, it's not perfect. So what I'm gonna do is take my tool, push the sides in, go into the center part and push the center part back just to try to make it look as perfect as I can. Now I want to paint it gold. I already used some of this, so I'm just going to use the same plate and brush that I was using. I have this Rolcom Super Gold. I got this at Sugar Delights, I think it is, but I'll link it below. Take some lemon extract, or you can use high alcohol volume vodka and add it to make a little paste. Make a pair of paste pants like Ross. And then I'm basically like dabbing and painting. So you want to make sure that you get in all the little crevices. So it is all gold on all sides and in the middle, so you don't see any yellow showing through. If this starts to dry out a little bit, I just add a little more lemon extract to thin it out. See, the reason that I dab is because I feel like it gets in the crevices better when I give it a little tappy, like Happy Gilmore. So I'm gonna need a little more gold. And just continue the process until it's completely covered. Like, you have to look at it from different angles, because back here I can see that it is really yellow. None of the gold got in the back. You'll see where you missed as you start looking around. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to let it dry for about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to put it on my cake. Also, as it's drying, you want to make sure that it's not going to stick to the surface. So just taking some kind of tool and just moving it around. It'll be a lot easier to lift if you do this step. I want to put the chain on. So I'm going to wrap the chain around this middle tier. With the gold being on it, you want to make sure that you don't have the gold touching a bunch of other places, because it's going to transfer the gold onto whatever it touches. That's why sometimes it's nice to have this in little pieces that you can piece together. So if I pick this up as one piece, I don't know if it's going to stay together because it's kind of broken in the middle. All right, so I have 3 pieces here. So I'm going to just gently pick it up, one of the sections, and place it around the cake. Now see here, the chain is broken. So as I'm placing it on the cake, I'm gonna just wanna push it together so it looks like it's still one piece. This is where these little tools come in handy. I'm gonna use some piping gel and a little paintbrush. Get a little bit of piping gel on the paintbrush and just kind of lift up some of the pieces and get a little bit of piping gel underneath it so it'll hold it secure to the cake, and it'll be easier to maneuver pieces in place because they're not going to move if there's piping gel underneath. You don't need it under every single piece, but especially the broken ones, you want to make sure they stay where you put them. And I'll put a little piping gel under the pieces at the end to anchor it in place. Gently lift this up and transfer it and try to connect the pieces. And do the same thing where the pieces are broken, just try to get a little piping gel under. This last piece got a little messed up as I was taking it out of the mold, but luckily it's on the back of the cake, so it's not that big of a deal. And there is your awesome gold chain on your cake. So here you go. Here is your gold chain. This actually is one of my most popular designs. People love this and they keep requesting it, and I love making it because it's so much fun. I'm gonna set this down. So when you're working with molds, it can get a little annoying because sometimes molds have a lot of little details in them. And that's why I show you that I peel the mold away from the fondant instead of trying to pull the fondant out of the mold. That mold, every time I use it, I do get, at the very end, like I showed you, it gets a little thin. But all in all, you can always, what's the word I'm looking for? Manipulate. You can always manipulate it back into the correct position, and you can't even tell that the chains were broken. So I really can't think of anything else to say about this. If you have any questions, leave them below. I will get back to you as soon as I can. I actually check my YouTube comments once a day before I start working. And please like this video if you liked it. It really helps out my channel. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already and you want to see more videos like this. And you can follow me on social media. I am on Facebook and Instagram, and I have my website. I will link all of that below. Thank you so much for watching the video. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.